Robert Nesta Marley February 6, 1945 to May 11, 1981, was a Jamaican singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Considered one of the pioneers of reggae, he fused elements of reggae, ska, and rocksteady and was renowned for his distinctive vocal and songwriting style. Marley increased the visibility of Jamaican music worldwide and became a global figure in popular culture. He became known as a Rastafarian icon, and he infused his music with a sense of spirituality. Marley is also considered a global symbol of Jamaican music and culture and identity, and was controversial in his outspoken support for democratic social reforms. Marley also supported the legalization of cannabis and advocated for Pan-Africanism. Born in 9 Mile, Jamaica, Marley began his career in 1963, after forming the group Teenagers with Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, which became the Wailers. In 1965, they released their debut studio album, The Wailing Wailers, which included the single One Love, a reworking of People Get Ready. It was popular worldwide and established the group as a rising figure in reggae. The Wailers released 11 more studio albums, and after signing to Island Records, changed their name to Bob Marley and the Wailers. While initially employing louder instrumentation and singing, they began engaging in rhythmic-based song construction in the late 1960s and early 1970s, which coincided with Marley's conversion to Rastafari. Around this time, Marley relocated to London, and the group embodied their musical shift with the release of the album The Best of the Wailers, 1971. Bob Marley and the Wailers began to gain international attention after signing to Island and touring in support of the albums Catch a Fire and Burnin', both 1973. Following their disbandment a year later, Marley carried on under the band's name. The album Natty Dread, 1974, received positive reviews. In 1975, following the global popularity of Eric Clapton's version of Marley's I Shot the Sheriff, Marley had his international breakthrough with his first hit outside Jamaica, a live version of No Woman, No Cry, from the live album. This was followed by his breakthrough album in the United States, Rastaman Vibration, 1976, which reached the top 50 of the Billboard Soul charts. A few months later, Marley survived an assassination attempt at his home in Jamaica, which was believed to be politically motivated. He permanently relocated to London, where he recorded the album Exodus, which incorporated elements of blues, soul, and British rock and had commercial and critical success. In 1977, Marley was diagnosed with acral lentiginous melanoma. He died in May 1981, shortly after baptism into the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Fans around the world expressed their grief, and he received a state funeral in Jamaica. The Greatest Hits album Legend was released in 1984 and became the best-selling reggae album of all time. Marley also ranks as one of the best-selling music artists. Marley was born on February 6, 1945 at the farm of his maternal grandfather in 9 Mile, St. Ann Parish, colony of Jamaica, to Norval Sinclair Marley and Seth Ella Malcolm. Norval was a white Jamaican born in Clarendon Parish, and whose cousins claimed that the Marley surname had Syrian Jewish origins. This is however not conclusive and speculative and was refuted by Marley's biographer. Norval went by the moniker Captain, despite only having been a private in the British Army. At the time of his marriage to Seth Ella Malcolm, an Afro-Jamaican then 18 years old, Norval was supervising a subdivision of land for war veteran housing, and he was about 64 years old at the time of Bob Marley's birth. Norval, who provided little financial support for his wife and child and rarely saw them, died when Marley was 10 years old. Some sources state that Marley's birth name was Nesta Robert Marley, with a story that when Marley was still a boy, a Jamaican passport official reversed his first and middle names because Nesta sounded like a girl's name. Marley's maternal grandfather, Omaria, known as Amile, was an early musical influence on Marley. Marley began to play music with Neville Livingston, later known as Bunny Wailer, while at Stepney Primary and Junior High School in 9 Mile, where they were childhood friends. At age 12, Marley left 9 Mile with his mother and moved to the Trenchtown section of Kingston. Marley's mother and Thaddeus Livingston, Bunny Wailer's father, had a daughter together named Claudette Pearl, who was a younger sister to both Bob and Bunny. With Marley and Livingston living together in the same house in Trenchtown, their musical explorations deepened to include the new ska music and the latest R&B from United States radio stations whose broadcasts reached Jamaica. Marley formed a vocal group with Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh. The lineup was known variously as the Teenagers, the Wailing Rude Boys, the Wailing Wailers, and finally just the Wailers. Joe Higgs, who was part of the successful vocal act Higgs and Wilson, lived nearby and encouraged Marley. Marley and the others did not play any instruments at this time and were more interested in being a vocal harmony group. Higgs helped them develop their vocal harmonies and began teaching Marley guitar. Marley's mother later married Edward Booker, a civil servant from the United States, giving Marley two half-brothers, Richard and Anthony. In February 1962, Marley recorded 4 songs, Judge Not, One Cup of Coffee, Do You Still Love Me, and Terror, at Federal Studios for local music producer Leslie Kong. 3 of the songs were released on Beverly's, with One Cup of Coffee being released under the pseudonym Bobby Martell. In 1963, Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, Peter Tosh, Jr. Braithwaite, Beverly Kelso, and Sherry Smith were called the Teenagers. They later changed the name to the Wailing Rude Boys, then to the Wailing Wailers, at which point they were discovered by record producer Coxsone Dodd, and finally to the Wailers. Their single Simmer Down for the Coxsone label became a Jamaican #1 in February 1964, selling an estimated 70,000 copies. The Wailers, now regularly recording for Studio One, found themselves working with established Jamaican musicians such as Ernest Ranglin, arranger It Hurts to Be Alone, the keyboardist Jackie Mittoo and saxophonist Roland Alfonso. By 1966, Braithwaite, Kelso, and Smith had left the Wailers, leaving the core trio of Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, and Peter Tosh. In 1966, Marley married Rita Anderson and moved near his mother's residence in Wilmington, Delaware, in the United States for a short time, during which he worked as a DuPont lab assistant and on the assembly line and as a forklift operator at a Chrysler plant in nearby Newark, under the alias Donald Marley. Though raised Catholic, Marley became interested in Rastafari beliefs in the 1960s, when away from his mother's influence. After returning to Jamaica, Marley formally converted to Rastafari and began to grow dreadlocks. After a financial disagreement with Dodd, Marley and his band teamed up with Lee Scratch Perry and his studio band, The Upsetters. Although the alliance lasted less than a year, they recorded what many consider the Wailers' finest work. Marley and Perry split after a dispute regarding the assignment of recording rights, but they would continue to work together.